right outside of the bathroom with hats on and a notepad pretending to be the paparazzi.
That's funny.
All right, let's do this. Cool. All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Barry Schwartz. I'm the news editor at Search Engine Land. And I'm really happy to do my second time doing this live at Search Engine Land with Search Engine Land. Last week, we did a little talk with a bunch of SEOs about how things are going in life and just some general SEO questions. And we've been doing a bunch of these live with Search Engine Land events on PPC, on local, and a bunch of other things. And today, I'm really excited to do one with a bunch of people that I follow very closely, specifically around algorithm changes, specifically with Google. So I like to introduce everybody. And in this conversation, we're going to be talking specifically around algorithm changes around what we're seeing with this COVID-19 and coronavirus stuff. So let's go in no specific order, except for what I wrote down on my list here. I'm Barry Schwartz, the news editor at Search Engine Land, but let's first welcome Marie Haynes from your own agency. Could you please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, what you do?
Sure thing. My name's Marie Haynes, and I have my own agency, Marie Haynes Consulting. We're based in Ottawa, Canada, and just like everybody else right now, we're working remotely, coping with what's going on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this talk. It's going to be helpful, I think.
Cool. And what's your remote setup there? Are you allowed to walk outside and look at the air, or you have to stay inside?
I have a difficult situation. My internet is less than 1 megabytes per second download. And so to do a call like this, I actually had to sneak into my office, which is, it's crazy. I do this thing with Lysol wipes, and I haven't touched a surface that another human being has touched. I haven't seen a human being in ages. The rest of my staff are all working from their houses. As much as I can, I am too, but it's challenging. With children, with internet issues, we're all facing the same really tough challenges.
Interesting. That's I didn't realize you had to go into your office for this. So I apologize for making you do that. I haven't been to my office since I go every few days to get the mail, but it's a pretty empty office, and I was able to forward the mail, so hopefully I won't have to go back there for a while. Anyway, stay safe and definitely mask up on the way out. Next thing, one person I wanted to introduce was Olga. Is Olga from SEMRush. Olga, could you please tell us a little about you, the company, and where you're based?
Sure. So my name is Olga. I'm head of global marketing for SEMRush. We're the tool for SEO and PPC and content marketing professionals. And we do track Google changes daily. So I'm currently working remotely. I'm in Russia now, and I'm kind of stuck there. And we, in March, we already took all 800 people across the world work remotely, which was a challenge considering the dev teams and all the accountancy. And so now, I think we're working across 10 or more than 10 countries remotely worldwide. So yeah, that's how we're coping. We're pretty much used to Zoom, Slack, and I do stand-ups with my teams every day, which really helps to stay connected.
Awesome. Stay safe there. Is the weather there, as you said, in the 60s before we started this live?
Yes, yeah.
And you're able to go outside at all, or not really?
Not really.
Okay, all right. Hopefully that treadmill works well for you. Mordy from RankRanger. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, what you're doing.
So my name is Mordy Oberstein. I'm the CMO of RankRanger. We're a growth organic insights tracking platform, rank tracking platform, SEO tool, and we focus a lot on algorithm updates. I'm coming to you from right outside of Jerusalem. I work from home in general, so this is kind of not so new to me. What's new to me is I have 4 kids who I'm hiding from all day long while I'm trying to do this. Because my wife's actually a nurse and she's out of the house most of the day, so I'm stuck with them. And that's been kind of challenging, and it's been kind of fun. It's been interesting. I was doing a podcast the other day. In the middle of the podcast, all of a sudden there was like all hell broke loose at home. So that was a lot of fun. This is great. I'm loving it every second.
Awesome. And amazing work from your wife. It must be fairly challenging, but also probably, anyway.
I mean, she's not on the front lines, thank God. She's at a nursing home, but
still,
it just means she's out of the house. She gets to escape basically every day.
Okay.
That's what I look at.
Got it. Awesome. And Dr. Pete Meyers from Moz, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm Pete Meyers. I'm a marketing scientist for Moz. We're Seattle-based, but I'm in the suburbs of Chicago. And yeah, we've been following the algo for quite a while now and talk about it often. And this is a new mess, a little different situation. But I've worked remotely for about 10 years. Like SEMRush, we've been full remote for going on a month because obviously Seattle was a big hotspot in the US. So we've got 150 people remote and we're surviving, but it's challenging. I'm used to being remote, but like Mordy, I've got 2 kids and my wife are home and she usually commutes. So I usually have the kids before and after, but now it's homeschooling and e-learning, and our e-learning curriculum changes every week. So it's like, here's the 8 new platforms we're on. So I'm learning Google Classroom. So maybe I'll learn like Google Classroom optimization or I mean, there's a whole new side of Google I can market after this. We'll see.
There you go. Learning on the job for jobs.
Yeah, another job.
Awesome. That's great news. Okay. So anybody watching live, if you are watching live, you can definitely go ahead and comment directly on YouTube by clicking through to the YouTube video. And there's a comments box on the right-hand side. We'll hopefully get to your questions there live and ask those things. So I'm glad that you guys are all managing as best as you can. You all seem healthy and, somewhat, awake, which is good, especially with all the heavy load on work that you have to do all day long between work and kids and everything else that you have to do. So I've been following, obviously, all your tools for a long time. I've been following, of course, what the SEOs and the SEO chatter has been saying for a long time. And it seems like recently, in the past maybe few weeks or so, maybe since this COVID-19 coronavirus stuff has started to spike up, that the algorithms, specifically the Google algorithm, has been a little bit more, I guess, radical or drastic in terms of changes over the past few weeks. That's my perception, both on tracking all your tools plus more tools, as well as the chatter. I guess let's start with, since PU went last, what do you consider normal changes on a day-to-day basis versus what we're seeing today?
Oh, what's normal? When I started doing this, that was kind of the fundamental question. I realized I didn't know. I was comparing all this data to never actually knowing what the normal baseline was. And, it took a long time. I think it's really one thing to know, I think, about all our tools and all these tools by necessity is we track fluctuations. We track how much rankings are changing, but that causality is really hard to tease apart. And so we don't know right now if the web is changing, if Google is changing something, if people's behavior is changing. So the rate of change does seem high since COVID, but we also know that people are just doing things so differently that it's nearly impossible to piece that apart. Been trying to dig into some of that. And I think it's hard too, because they converge now, right? Like, I don't want to overgeneralize about ML, but when you have user inputs feeding the system, then the algorithm is to some degree rewriting itself as our behaviors change. And so is that us? Is that COVID or is that the algo? I don't even know what to call it, right? Like, did Google specifically launch code every single day that's significant? No, I doubt it. But is the algorithm adapting to us as we engage in new behaviors? Absolutely. So, what's us and what's the algo? If you're hoping to leave the call with that, I hope that, Mordy or Olga or Marie know the answer, because I don't. I'm looking for the way to answer that.
So let's ask Olga, what do you think the answer on that is? Do you think this is the new normal for a while in terms of the algorithm fluctuating so much? Do you think it's because we as searchers are doing different types of searches?
I think, we attribute it more to online behavior and the change, because change for industries, for some industries we see drastic changes, and for some the changes hasn't really. Well, so for example, news and entertainment or media, these SERPs, they change constantly, and if those are not affected and the others are, then we make a conclusion that this is some tweak in the algorithm, and then we'll look further whether it was an update or that was more due to online behavior. So here I see the change in online behavior specifically. We've checked some searches in the industries I don't know if I'm jumping ahead of what we plan to discuss, but for example, pets as an industry and as a keyword cloud, I would say it has been affected in a couple of weeks, and we've seen the really big spike in dog adoption as a keyword. So in February it was around 370,000 searches per month, and then it spiked to 550,000. So then obviously if we see, if Google sees so many people searching for how to adopt a dog, then Google will be tweaking that industry. That's an assumption, but that's the kind of the conclusion that we came to. So it's all to online behavior.
Interesting. Mordy, what do you think about that? Do you think it's online behavior that's affecting it?
That's a good question. I mean, to go back to what Dr. P said a few minutes ago, the trackers, in terms of normal behavior, it's really, really interesting. I sort of look back at the last 2 years, and it really have, outside of the core updates, you haven't really seen this much volatility in a short amount of time like this. Usually you see like 2-3 days of volatility, maybe a couple of days later, another 1-2 days, sort of maybe a reversal of that. But here you're looking, I think it's like, out of the last 16 days, from March, let's say 15th through the April 3rd, you're talking like 16 days of volatility that hasn't happened in the last 2 years. Haven't gone back past that. So it is really interesting. And what Dr. P said, that is true. It's really top level. You don't really know what that means until you sort of try to dive into it. We're just sort of like finding a needle in a haystack, like on steroids. What I did see, though, to sort of speak to what Olga was bringing up, is that the COVID-19 keywords, whether it be something like, COVID-19 cure or anything like COVID-19 athletics, really anything related to COVID, there's a very, very clear pattern, which is really interesting. And it sort of seems as if Google made a very, very specific change to how it relates to COVID on not when the tracker started seeing the updates, but on March 11th, which is interesting because that's when I think the World Health Organization labeled it a pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. And it seems like Google pushed a button on that day. And all of a sudden, it was as if news sites had never ranked before for the keyword started ranking, which is bizarre in itself, because usually you'll see during an update, you'll have sites that, gain a few positions, lose a few positions, but not sites that were not ranking at all before for the keyword, all of a sudden appear on the SERP. So it looks like Google pushed a button for COVID. And what I think is happening is that it's almost like a news result, because it's a developing story that Google hasn't really seen before, and it keeps spreading into all sorts of directions and twists and turns. And news results, like Olga said, are very, very volatile in general. And it's a hard thing for Google to sort of figure out, how do we qualify this? How do we deal with this? And because Google's so good at making connections, it impacts so many different things. Like, for example, I was looking at keywords about desanitization or disinfection, whatever it is. All of a sudden, there's a shift, and Google went bonkers, throwing sites in and out, up and down, because all of a sudden, what was a normal disinfection is now a COVID disinfection, and Google doesn't know how to handle it yet. So COVID sort of reaches into all these other areas, and I think what happens is something like a chain reaction. There's so many different areas that COVID touches, and Google's so good at making connections that Google sort of had to say, wait a second, how do we understand this, and how do we understand that? And now, how does it relate? How does it work for other areas that are connected? So I'm going to sort of put it like this. Let's take a keyword like, tourist attractions in New York City. So one of the results that Google was playing around with was a result from the New York Times about staying at home, what to do, and how to have fun while staying at home. And Google didn't really know what to do with that result. It sort of threw it in there, took it off the SERP, took it back off the SERP, put it back on the SERP. And at the same time, all the other regular normal sites that rank for that keyword, top 50 things to do in New York City, also fluctuated up and down, back and forth, and did a whole bunch of reversals. And Google sort of said, well, if this keyword is being impacted by COVID, what about other keywords that relate to this keyword? And what about other keywords that relate to those keywords, and other keywords that relate to those keywords? And Google's sort of trying to figure out, like, how far is this COVID thing reach, and how accurate are we based upon what's going on?
This might be a lead into Marie, but I'm curious, the last few months we've had all these updates around health and YMYL, and now we have this major health crisis. So it's like Google has been tweaking everything around your money or your life and these health kind of things. And now this crisis comes along, and I wonder if this crisis is triggering all that work they've done over the last 6 months with core updates to a degree maybe that they didn't even anticipate.
So it's Google's fault we have this update, this pandemic.
Probably not.
I'm not taking the causality quite that direction, but it's
Okay,
almost
Marie,
like they set the stage for reworking the algorithm around these problems, and then it's being tested. Like this is their live test.
Yeah,
of
that's
everything they've done.
Marie, that's your expertise. So what do you think?
Well, and I think Dr. Pete's exactly thinking the same lines that I am. That probably 2018, mid 2018 was when, that's when we first saw the Medic update, and we saw, Google's been interested in showing us good, trustworthy sites for quite some time. But at that time, they really seemed to take an interest in health. And the goal was to make it so that people don't find untrustworthy information. So I believe, Barry, you covered this, that some people asked John Mueller, is Google manually going in and saying, well, we're going to change this search result because it's unsafe. If somebody says, does this random treatment work for coronavirus? Google doesn't want people to be finding these out there wacky conspiracy theory sites, right? And so this is, I think, what we're seeing now is Google's done a fairly good job. If you remember, there was an article that was put out last year by Google, a white paper on how they fight disinformation. And they talk about the fact that, especially in health queries, they want to surface sites that are known as authorities. And we see that, if you do searches for anything that's important and related to coronavirus right now, you're going to see recognizable authority health sites, that are ranking well, and that's great. I think in terms of what is the algorithm doing, what we tend to do is we look at every week, is there a particular date where our list of clients is seeing some change? And we saw March 10th or 11th, we started saying, oh, there's an algorithm update. And I believe, and then we look at the tools. So we look at all of these people's tools, and they were kind of like, well, some of them are up, some of them are not. And then, like Mordy said, March 11th was when we started talking about this, actually, I think, was that when the World Health Organization called it a pandemic?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah.
And it was around that time that the NBA shut down, and that Donald Trump made the ban on travel from Europe. And so what we thought initially was a Google update turned out that the whole world had changed their search patterns. And that's the trick there, is in trying to figure out for your search traffic, is it really, are we seeing changes because something Google did, which I think is less likely right now. And if you are seeing changes, it's either related to changes in search traffic patterns by the world, or Google adapting to that. And I don't think they've written, a specific algorithm for here's what we do because of coronavirus. They're adapting to how the world changes their searches. And that's what I think the trick for us now is in trying to interpret what's happening.
Right. So
I'm sorry, can I add something real quick though? The other piece of the puzzle I've had some trouble deciphering is all the sites making changes. So huge e-commerce sites that suddenly have to show all their products are out of stock, or remove products or add products. We're seeing massive changes to sites too that trigger index changes and ranking changes. And I'm curious how we separate some of that, or sorry, Barry, go ahead.
No, that's true. Even like what I'm writing on a daily basis is less about, it's search related, but it's search related to COVID. Because that's the only thing that's really going on these days. So yeah, it's just interesting how the web is changing so fast, and I guess that's how the web works, and then Google has to adapt to it. It was interesting. I asked John Mueller about this about a week ago, I believe, on a, I don't know if it was about a week ago on a Hangout. And I guess I shared that post with you. And basically, I asked him, I was joking about the manual thing in terms of like, is Google manually changing things? Obviously, they add their one boxes, they add their SOS things and stuff like that to kind of protect things. But I asked John Mueller, is Google ranking algorithm specifically being influenced by changes in searcher behavior? And he kind of implied no. He kind of basically said, and I'll quote, I don't think that's happening. He says, user behavior is constantly shifting all the time. So things like the Oscars happen, and that's really short-lived. So when the Oscars is spiking for the next 2 days after the Oscars, Google has to kind of like handle that. And that's what he thinks people are seeing around the COVID changes, but it doesn't affect everything, he said. He said it affects specifically only the areas that are impacted by it. And I guess with COVID, so many things are impacted by it on some level, some more, some less. Like you're saying, out of stock stuff versus people searching for flights to go on vacations. So the question is, if so many, I guess he kind of non-answered it. And then Paul Haar came in there and was like, interesting theories. I don't know if you saw this, interesting speculation. Paul Haar is like one of the search engineers that's been in Google since like, I don't know, like 2000 or something, working on core ranking forever. And if anybody would know anything about this topic, it would be him. And he basically just said, interesting speculation, but all I'm going to say is that, yes, we're seeing very different mix of queries these days, as you'd expect. And I'm very proud of what our team has built in search to get people information about the COVID thing. And then he listed basically a Google blog post about, all the different things they're doing around connecting people around COVID information and resources, which is basically their one boxes, their SOS and stuff like that. I wish he would say, yeah, searcher behavior does impact the algorithm, but then it'll open up a whole big can of worms because Google doesn't like to say things. But you all seem to think that's the case.
I mean, you could sort of see it in a way. Like you watch the COVID keywords sort of play themselves out. Like the NBA case that Marie brought up is a great case. I don't know if you follow sports, but it's a really nice way to see how the algorithm has like sort of treated the COVID keywords. There was a couple of weeks ago, the Utah Jazz, one of the players tested positive for COVID-19. And the team that they played before were the Boston Celtics. So the Boston Celtics, all of them had to go into quarantine. And if I think around like March 16th, March 17th, Google starts showing, if you Google coronavirus NBA or something like that, all these local TV stations, like Boston stations. And I sort of thought, well, maybe this is a local story. It happened in Utah, you're talking about Boston. And then Google sort of realizes, wait a second, this is part of a national or global narrative. And it's knocked out all of those local TV stations from ranking. And I think it's a funny way I'm not, questioning John at all. But I don't know if the correlation or the to match this up to the Oscars sort of is on par with what's happening here. It's a totally different kind of thing. It's developing. It's like the Oscars, we kind of know what it is, but this is going in a totally different direction in every 5 seconds. It's like you're figuring it out as you're going along.
I've seen it with intent shifts. A weird example from a year or two ago, there was some political story at Kellyanne Conway. Somebody said something about Inspector Gadget. Can't remember what the story was, and it doesn't matter. I'll stay out of the politics. But overnight, that query went from being about the cartoon to being a mix of like this knowledge panel and news and political organic results. And there's no way, and I've seen it with earthquakes. I saw some weird reference to Jimmy Hoffa a year or two ago where it was like general informational, and then there was a news story, and it turned into every result about that story. It wasn't just the news top stories box, it was the organic. And I don't see, just seeing that over and over again where something becomes newsworthy and it shifts the whole SERP. Google's not in there doing that. They're not in there changing that every day. So I cannot see at this point how that's not coming from user behavior. And again, that's not like COVID where all the sites are being rewritten or they're taking down inventory or they're writing new stories overnight to keep up. Yeah, there are new stories being written, but even the organic, we see that intent shift because something major happened, some seismic shift in the world. And this is, one of the most seismic shifts we've had in my life. So I think Google can be very specific with their answers. Let's put it that way. I think they answer the very narrow, version of the question. But the idea that what's happening with searcher behavior is not causing these shifts means that Google is in there writing that code for every intent every day. And I can't believe that's what's happening. No.
I'm wondering if it's possible. I'd love to hear all of your opinions on this. If what's happening with coronavirus has shifted what is considered YMYL for some queries. So if you think of, like, we have one client who at the beginning of all this had a post that went insanely viral. Oh gosh, that was a horrible word to use. That did really, really well. All about how to make your own hand sanitizer. And it went like crazy, got tons of views. And then all of a sudden they were on page 3. They were ranking top 3 for that. And now if you look at the number 1 result, last time I checked, it was Healthline that has the number 1 spot. And you almost wonder if it's possible that Google's algorithms, it's not like, again, like they rewrote the algorithm to say, now hand sanitizers are all going to be considered important health information where maybe they weren't before. But instead, they've managed to figure out that the way people are searching, they're searching for health queries, and it seems to be very important to people's health right now. So we're only going to take results from large, trustworthy health authorities. I don't know what
that went from basically here's how to save a few bucks to here's how to not die.
Exactly. Yes.
You know,
yeah. So it's much more. Now,
really
Gary Eash did say before that there aren't, now don't quote me on this. I think he said there aren't varying degrees of YMYL, like you're either YMYL or you're not. But I think there's something to that. Whereas if your traffic was, if you were ranking on page 1 for something and now you've been, lost pages in ranking positions, it might just be that before you weren't held to such a strong EAT sort of standard that that Google's looking for more trust signals now that hand sanitizer is a life issue as opposed to a save a few dollars issue.
I saw an interesting one that maybe speaks to this. It was one of these, again, like one of these travel queries I was looking at for, top things to do in London right now. And you have the normal sites, top 15 things to do. They stay the same, which is point. You shouldn't check your rankings. You check your traffic, because even though you rank number 1, no one's searching for that right now. But there was a couple of pages that I saw that were telling you not like the top 50 things to do right now, but what's happening this week. Like, go out there and do this week. And those pages got killed. And it made me think what you're thinking, like maybe Google's saying like, hey, you're supposed to be in quarantine right now. We're not going to throw a page that's telling you to leave your house and go do these things.
I feel like that's too black and white though. Like, I feel like Google, it's not like, because otherwise Google, like the algorithm doesn't just go, oh, here's a new issue, we should address that, right? Like, I think it has to be based on search patterns. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm not the best person to do this, but I think you know what I'm saying, right? That the definition of what's important has changed, and that's definitely going to change keyword rankings.
There's a question in the chat that I'm not sure. I mean, I know the answer to this. Do you think, Scrat55 asked, do you think the Google algorithm has an impact on Google Discover product? So yeah, I mean, Google, whenever they do a core update, they say Google Discover is impacted by this, but I'm not sure if there's a way to, if any of the tool providers are tracking Google Discover changes. I don't think Moz does. I don't want to talk to you guys. Any of you guys?
No, generally too personalized.
Yep.
Is anybody tracking Google Discover? No. Okay. But the answer is yeah. I mean, if your website does get a lot of Google Discover traffic in general, and there's an algorithm update, it could actually have an impact on how you rank in Google Discover, even if it's personalization. I've seen it firsthand with my news sites and stuff. As after updates, you can definitely see if there's a downgrade or increase after these core updates. Although I'm not sure if the COVID stuff or any of the changes we've seen in the past few weeks, which are unconfirmed updates, Google has not said they made any core algorithm updates or any type of update outside of one boxes and SOS stuff and general things around schema. They haven't done any algorithmic updates that they confirmed in the past, I guess since what, January? Like the January update?
Well, I can probably, if that's a question, whether there was an update. So we checked really thoroughly what's happening within the industries. And then although we see the deviations in many industries from normal, then it's, we attributed to that, to search behavior and, search patterns. But what we definitely have seen is the change in the percentage of several SERP features. Obviously, that's ads and shopping, since and that's more of a behavior of companies rather than people searching, because companies reduced their ad spend, and that's basically also what's triggering that. And there was a really specific, interesting update that I believe Search Engine Land covered, and that was about featured snippets, and that definitely looked like an update. So basically there are it's a really minor percent, so it was a minor update, but 1% of all SERPs containing featured snippets now have featured snippets not in the top position. So it's it's around, I've written it down, so there 39,000 snippets where featured snippet is not 39 pages where featured snippet is not in number one position. So it's tiny basically, but it was, well, as we consider it as an update, and it was interesting because we've seen it for branded queries and also for like for regular ones, for informational ones as well.
One of our people keeps changing the number, but the last number he gave me was 274 out of 8 million. So, but I totally agree that like that has to be, that's an algo update, right? That's not, they didn't start moving from position 1 to 4 because, you know, COVID.
Yeah.
They're experimenting with something there.
What's amazing is it seems that Brody Clark has found the half of them that exist on the web.
I don't even do it myself anymore. And Twitter has made us so lazy. It's like, could someone, just to clarify my own experience, can someone give me some examples? It's like, yeah, I'm off having a sandwich. And
yeah, Brody posted a nice article on Search Engine Land covering a lot of those changes recently. So yeah, he's a great guy. When it's hard to track all these changes, and documenting screenshots of that is always fun and easy to look back at when you need it. Olga, going back to your data, I was curious. So I know you said you saw, you break it down by vertical and so forth.
Yeah.
Specifically in the past few weeks, are there any verticals that were kind of untouched?
Untouched. So the lowest deviation. So deviation is just when we see the high deviation score, that means that it's really higher than normal. So least impacted is news, sports, and entertainment, which are actually the busiest and fastest changing SERPs that we see. And then the most affected were books and literature, hobbies, health, pets, science. So that's and if we see the deviation in this like regular industries that do not really get much changes in many changes daily, then we consider that something has like something impacted the results greatly, but we don't see any patterns within around the industries. So that means that if that's not an algorithm update, that's still, well, Google has different algorithms for every industry, and seeing those changes across industries meant for us that the complete and drastic change in search behavior must, of course, the algorithm to understand and behave differently and to give different results or update the SERPs. What we also are tracking 1,300 keywords for COVID-19 niche specifically, but that's now the niche that's really dominated by media. So we've seen media sites go up 4 positions on average. And there are certain leaders for this niche. So, and then average score for COVID-19 keywords is 9.5 out of 10. So this is the highest score, and that doesn't change day by day. So it's just constant 9.5. So that's very volatile at the moment, obviously.
Any industries that surprised you out of curiosity?
Well, what really, so now I see a lot of, well, even jokes and memes about walking the dog. So that was really interesting, where we checked for how adopting a dog. And I think it's just, yeah, it's very, probably, well, people find ways to go outside. And then this is probably one of, that's why the keyword has a higher search volume. Also, online courses are booming, so they went from like 17,000 queries per month to around like 32K. So that's a huge change, and we even saw that in Google Trends, but basically Google Trends doesn't show the search volume. yeah, so that's the educational industry really has changed a lot, and it's not even free online courses, it's just online courses, so people are just looking for education.
We can't buy toilet paper or can't spend our money on anything else.
Yeah.
I've seen
Cool.
some changes in some industries that you wouldn't expect with, I mean, completely not health. And the one that is the strongest out of our clients is somebody who sells landscaping equipment. So again, people are stuck at home, they're looking for things to do. And that's where it becomes tricky, because this time of year, you tend to see, at least in this hemisphere, that more people are getting outside in the springtime. And so comparing year over year is important, but this client is up like 500%, something like that, compared to last year, which goes to tell you, I mean, people's habits change. And that's going to be next week, there'll be different habits. You know, we'll discover that when we've been home for more than this many weeks, different things happen, right? And so it's going to be challenging every week to determine what the changes are.
Right, and how, I guess you have a lot of, you know, clients across multiple verticals and so forth. How are you managing their expectations in terms of what's changing in the search results? Because a lot of things are changing a lot. Maybe their rankings have been bouncing up and down. Maybe they're getting less traffic because maybe they're a travel company. Maybe they're getting more traffic because they, like you said, they're selling lawnmowers. So how are you managing those expectations? What do you recommend for other SEOs listening to this to manage their client expectations?
What's interesting for us is we haven't had that many clients that have had unrealistic expectations. So I don't think, like, most of our clients are not expecting us to be fortune tellers in this time frame. They know that it's a chaotic time, and a lot of them are just sort of wanting regular maintenance. You know, some that are in slower times that still have the budget to work on SEO. We're working on things that maybe we had put off for a while. You know, we're working on reorganizing some content and fixing, trimming out thin content where maybe that wasn't the top priority before, but now that business is down, it's a project we've been wanting to work on for a while. I don't know if that fully answered the question, but we really haven't had a lot of clients that are looking to us to say, you know, how are we going to work differently in this time frame in the age of a global pandemic? I think everybody sort of expects that nobody knows how to deal with this.
Or it's such a fundamental business problem that the SEO side gets a little overshadowed. You know, I have a friend who is at a small agency that closed their doors 2 weeks ago because 95% of their customers are hotel and restaurants. So, you know, are they coming to us with SEO problems? Or are they buying tools or not buying tools? Because no, they're not buying tools because they just went under. You know, our local business customers have been obviously like the most hit tools wise, but there's no magic. You know, if your restaurant is closed right now, that's not a GMB problem. You know, I mean, there are problems like, how do I list that? How do I let people know I have curbside or whatever it is? But, you know, I wonder how much of it right now is like people are so overwhelmed by just the core business aspect that.
Yeah, I think Larry Kim, who used to run, what was the site he ran? Well, now he runs Mobile Moxie. WordStream. So now he runs Mobile Moxie. He's like, I think he said like we lost like 20% of our customers like in the past few weeks, but there is an uptick in terms of new leads from newer customers that have never used us, which is interesting for software platforms where, all right, so yeah, 20% of your customers are impacted. They're, you know, restaurants, whatever they might be. Are they canceling their subscriptions with you, for pausing them for now? How are you guys managing that? I don't know if you want to talk about any of that on this live broadcast, especially if maybe some of you have VC funding, but
what can we say? We're seeing it slowly. You know, obviously the cycle doesn't hit right away. We're starting to hear from agencies, especially smaller agencies. We're certainly seeing it on the local product because, you know, if you're a restaurant or smaller, if you're a non-enterprise local client, even enterprise, if you've closed all your shops temporarily, you know, they're starting to talk about what do we do and when should we scale this back? I think my concern, and I've hesitated to write about it because it can seem self-serving, but I worry that, you know, with PPC, and I used to do some work in that, there is this on-off aspect. I mean, the advantage of it is you can turn it on and get stuff today. and you can turn it off and stop spending money. And I worry a little bit about there's people who are kind of turning off all the SEO efforts and turning off the content efforts. And how do we help them get into kind of a maintenance mode? Because if they shut it all off now and then things start to recover and they go to turn it back on, you know, with organic, there's a 3 or 6 month cycle to start moving again, you know, to get that momentum, and it ramps down and ramps up. And it's not like this on-off function, this 0-1 function that happens with paid sometimes. So I think what we have people asking right now is kind of, is there a way to, what's sustainable? You know, what's kind of sustainable organic for the next couple of months, where, like Marie said, maybe there's some things that have been backlogged or some basic things we need to do, but we're not going to do all our normal stuff. And what does SEO look like? And that's tough. And we're kind of trying to discover that as we go.
Yeah,
Correction, if I can, I said Mobile Moxie, I meant Mobile Monkey. Larry Kim is the CEO of Mobile Monkeys, just to clarify that.
Oh, Mobile Moxie is
Cindy Crum.
Yes, I apologize for that. Mordy, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, similar to Dr. Pete's. We've been, you know, the first question that we had was, we wonder what the trend's sort of going to be. Are people going to say, well, we're firing people? Are we just going to, you know, shut down our whole organic campaigns and, you know, save costs wherever we possibly can? Or are we going to sort of manage this? Because it is a long-term game. It's not like data. If you turn it off, you can just turn it back on again. It's gone. All the trends, everything you saw, everything that was going on these past months, you turned it off, it's off. I mean, we found it really all depends on the niche. We've, you know, some travel niche, some clients, and it's very, very hard for them. And we've been trying to do whatever we can for them, but it's rough. I mean, it's hard to work with somebody who's saying, you know, I just had to fire half my staff. It's almost like it's a concern for us, but it's almost not a concern for us. There's like way bigger problems. I sent out an email yesterday to like 10,000 subscribers, whatever it is. And I noticed that the number of non-deliverables was like just out of proportion. And it wasn't like weird spammy email addresses. It was regular, you know, so-and-so, whatever company.com. Those are people who lost their jobs, who no longer work at and it's just a mess.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are saying, hey, please keep paying us $99 a month, even though you're
right. It's like,
even though your whole business just closed or your restaurant gets 3 orders a day. I mean, we know this is real. You know, this is very real. This isn't some new CMO who walked in and decided to shake things up, right? You know, this is deeply personal kind of stuff, and life and death. Frankly.
I think one of the hardest things right now is that as SEOs, people look to us as the people who know what to do. You know, we're the small group of people who actually know how to do stuff and figure out what Google's doing and what works. And nobody knows what to do now. You know, so this is, I think, a lot of an issue that a lot of people aren't talking about is just the mental health of the SEO community. That so many people have lost jobs, so many people are just stuck in this place where we can't be creating content, you know, unless we have coronavirus content, and what do we do? And so that's probably the biggest struggle for a lot of people right now, is just, we don't know how long this will last and we don't know how to cope. And so that's, I think those who are in this situation, if for SEO agencies that are losing clients, like, we don't know. This could be over soon. It could be years, and we don't know, you know, and the world will adapt. But I'm not trying to sound all downer, but I think that there's different challenges that have come up that we're not fully equipped to handle.
When it does come back, what's the situation going to be? Is it going to be the same, status quo, go back to normal, or new trends, new realities?
Like I said, I mean, we may not have conferences again. We may, who knows?
I hope not. I hope we do have conferences. Yeah, I mean, most of you guys have spoken at many conferences, and it's the way of the industry. Our SEO community is really so tight because of these conferences. And I think they'll definitely come back. I'm not, you know, the question is how long, and, you know, we'll find the cure. We'll find something. It might take some time, but I think we will get back to where we were at some point, hopefully sooner than later. Hopefully we'll get there. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about your tools, if that's okay. I think Mozcast was probably the first one to do the tracking, right? in terms of the public dashboard of what's changing. Is
I
that
think
correct?
somebody launched a couple months before we did when I was finishing up. And I can't remember who that was, so I won't take credit for the
maybe
idea
maybe
started
Digital
to be
Point.
cultivated by multiple people at the same time.
Was Digital Point? I don't know. They weren't really
I'm trying to. What's the old one? Yeah, I don't
Might,
know.
might have been Al Guru.
I don't think it was that
Alguru was
good.
Deviations?
later
That was
because we,
at the
yeah,
same
no,
time?
Dejan and
came
I
after
have
ours,
talked
I think.
about Alguru. Yeah, I'm trying to think which one it was. I'm blanking, but yeah, there was one that in fact I was like trying to finish up. I'm like, oh, come on.
But maybe I ask you guys,
too, you know.
maybe I ask you all to like kind of pitch your tools. And I know you probably similar track stuff similarly, but you know, what makes you guys different in terms of what you track? I don't know. It's not really, you guys aren't salespeople, but I was hoping like maybe people watching can understand the fundamentals of how Mozcast works versus SEMrush's tracking tool works versus RankRanger. So let's.
I can tell you real quick. It's funny for us. You know, it started out as just a personal research project to try and understand how things changed, and then Penguin hit. I think the first Penguin soon after, and we got to kind of see it in real time, and it was interesting. But for me, it's become weirdly the front end of it is a nice to have and something that, you know, we try and keep valid and interesting and help people get value out of. But it became a real learning platform for product for us, and to feed data into product and to kind of figure out how things are changing and do that back end research. So I think a lot of the value actually for Mozcast, ironically, isn't the Mozcast front end per se, but is how it's helped us make better choices about Moz products and understand where Google's headed and integrate that knowledge. So that's been really useful knowledge kind of across the company, and that's been fun for me. I would say that for me personally, and I think I've seen this with Mordy certainly, you know, the SERP features and how that landscape's changed for 3-4 years now, that's been more interesting to me in a lot of ways than this kind of core flex.
Absolutely.
You know, it's still a great, I think it's still, the value of it is, was it Google or was it just me? I mean, that's what people always say to me, like, thanks for telling me I wasn't crazy. You know, that's what these tools help me do, know that I wasn't crazy. But that niche stuff of what's going on and these SERP feature changes that we're all migrating towards, I mean, I think that's become so much more interesting. And I won't pitch one tool over the other. You know, I think the large data sets have some pros to them and are cool. And I like Olga's research on the categorical stuff is great. And I'm actually really interested in that, even though that's our competitor. We talk. Most of us talk all the time. I think one thing that's been a hard choice for me, but that's been interesting, is the Mozcast data set has been the same for about 5 years. So we on the stat side analyze millions of keywords, but because that's customer driven, it's changing all the time. So it's been really interesting to have this kind of fixed data set that I haven't touched for 5 years and see how it changes. The downside of that is some of the keywords in it are like, you know, Samsung Galaxy S1. So it's like, it's really great to have this historical, you know, stability, and sometimes that's really useful and can stand out, and other times it makes no sense at all. And so there's the funny thing to me is like there's pros and cons to like every approach we take with this, and so it's really valuable for me to talk to everyone and see the other tools, because we all have a different window into it. And so I don't pick one and say like this is the tool, even my own. Like I'm out looking at these, and Mordy and I talk pretty regularly, and like, hey, what'd you see? And my own team, like, hey, what'd you see in the customer keywords? So I'm glad we're all out doing this personally.
I love geeking out with you because we have a different data set. I mean, you guys track like more high search volume kind of keywords, I think, and we have like a very normalized, large, broad data set. So it's kind of cool to see the differences or the similarities. A lot of similarities, which is interesting, especially the SERP feature side. There's a ton to geek out over there. And same thing for us, like having the. I think it's kind of funny because like the rank fluctuation tools, we have a rank risk index. To me, it's like it's cute. It's nice. Like you see the index, you see it goes up. But if you don't really dive into it, it's like, okay, now what? But the SERP feeder stuff, there's so much to sort of see. You can see the bidding going on. You can see just so many different trends over time. Google's going towards a visual search, whatever it is, visual SERP rather. And it's driven our product side also the same kind of way. Like, wow, how do we integrate like SERP feature data into the product itself? And there's just so much to do there. So much to see there. So yeah, SERP feature is definitely cool.
What woke me up was, and it's been a while, I built this really crude, what I call feature alert. And all it did was go through the 10,000 SERPs and look for any new DOM markers, just like div ID, basic CSS stuff, like a new div ID. And I was like, well, maybe every month I'll get to see some new thing. And in 3 weeks, and this was 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, before things really took off, there were 3,000 div markers in this database. And I was like waking up every day with the computer telling me like, here's 27 new things Google launched. I'm like, oh my God, now they have to click through and see what ones were interesting. Then I email Barry or tweet Barry, and he's like, no.
Nice. Right.
We love your one-word answers, Barry. So I was like, hey Barry, I've got this whole thing, and is it new? And I write like 7 paragraphs. It's like, nope.
And then in 3 seconds, he has the URL to the article he did 15 years ago.
Well, there's a search box on Search Engine Roundtable. You can definitely feel free to use it. But,
I do, by the way, and I can't find it. I'm like, oh no.
Anyway, no, but
we love you for it.
No, but obviously the things that people spot, Google testing 6 months ago, and then they launched it, you guys pick up on it really quickly. So thank you for that. Olga, I just want to go back to you because you launched the SEMRush tool, the public-facing one with the I don't know if it has a nickname.
Sensor. Yeah, it's SEMRush Sensor. Yeah, it's I think we're the youngest tool, and we kind of analyzed what others had, and asked also the audience what they wanted to add. So I think it's free. You don't need even to have the SEMRush account, so it's open to public. And we have desktop on mobile data. We have different countries. So it's US, UK, Spain, Italy, Australia, Germany, and Japan as well. And we track China for Baidu as well. And we also have different industries. So that's what I really love. And Sensor is actually one of my favorite tools. It's really easy to use. We try to flag the Google updates, official and unofficial. And what I also love is the winners and losers per industry. So you can go and see the exact websites and the number of positions they've lost. And if you see a website there, that's obviously, even without using the tool that you already can, hopefully you spot yourselves in the winners table. And the deviation score that I mentioned, so you can really see. So if I see that the deviation score is high for real estate, I know that's an update. Because for the real estate, the SERPs are really, I would say, nothing, they don't have many changes daily. And then for SEMRush users, we try to kind of enhance the tool a bit. So anyone who uses position tracking, they can actually try the volatility of keywords that they track in their project. So this is what I also do for my projects and for different cities, and that's also what I love. So that's an easy tool, and with also SERP features. And for example, we also analyze the HTTPS percentage in top 10 and top 20, and we've seen a huge change within 3 years, and now it's definitely, so I would say that 2 years ago in top 20 it was 68%, and now it's always over 90 for any database. And the same for AMP. So it's not the percentage, but we calculate the percentage of AMP for every SERP. Lots of SERP features and industries. That's probably one of the core.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think we're we're at 97% now for HTTPS. Like Mordy said, we're a little more head term oriented, so sometimes those numbers are higher. But it's really. What have you seen for Baidu? I'm really curious. During COVID.
That I honestly haven't checked.
Okay. I like the Sensor.
We do, but personally, I don't.
It's like when people even ask about Bing, I'm like, let me.
No,
I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm genuinely like, wow. I wonder how volatility is like on Baidu right now.
I think Baidu has just so many types of its own. So we just track the general stuff. And then I believe that there are 4 different types. And yeah, that got me really confused when I went to China. Yeah, so that I never understood. So WeChat, I got the hang of it, but like, well, Baidu, no chance. So yeah.
The sensor tool also, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it also looks at like the industry chatter as one of the signals.
That's what we track. That's what the team tracks. So we do that for all of the updates. So then so the problem with all of the volatility tracking tools is that we all have different scales. So it's really tough it's easy to see the spikes when the algos happen, but then we need to understand like how severe the spike was in all of the tools. So what we gather all of the scores for all of the tools, and then we normalize the scale. So we calculate like we basically create the graph and then see how our score was compared to other tools. And for the core updates, Mordy would not enjoy it now, but basically for the core updates, we see that Mozcast and Sensa was kind of really closer to the SEO chatter, and then the other tools, like, they didn't have the same spikes. But for the most severe updates, Mozcast and us like closest to Google updates, and the Twitter chatter always comes one day after. But we haven't we didn't do it for all of the updates, but once a year we do it for April and March. That's usually the time.
Since we're being nice to each other, I'm going to admit a dirty secret, which is that I think at this point, the traffic to Mozcast is as good of an indicator of an update as the actual Mozcast picture. Like, the GA graph of Mozcast sometimes tells me more. Like, maybe I should just like pipe that into an API or something.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, I find these tools to be incredibly valuable, because back, I don't know, when I started doing this in 2003, tracking these updates, and I just did it based off of our people in the SEO community saying, "Oh my God, my rankings tanked," or something like that, or "My rankings are great." And that's how I tracked it. And then obviously Mozcast came out, and then a bunch of other tools. I'm like, all right, it's not just the community talking. There's tools to back it up. And then, great SEOs like Marie and Glenn and a bunch of others that dig into it. Like, all right, what happened with my clients? They go through all this stuff. They say, all right, this is what Google has said recently. This is what the patents say. This is what these white papers say. This is what my clients are doing, and is there an impact or not based on these algorithm updates, core updates, or non-confirmed updates. It's always great to have that whole pattern of chatter, the big ranking tools tracking this stuff, and then the SEOs like Marie and others digging deep into this, because it really kind of paints a much bigger and larger picture on what's going on in this wild world of SEO.
Funny, when I update the algo history, I go through the Mozcast data. I'm like, okay, how many days were over 85 or something, right? And then I look at the other tools and see if they matched. Then I go to Search Engine Roundtable and search your archive and see which dates matched and if you said something. And then I look at Glenn and Marie and some of the blogs. I'm like, okay, did anyone talk about specific industries being hit? And then it's like, well, if there's 2 out of 3, then I'm gonna add that. If it's just me, maybe not. If it's just you, maybe not. But if we all agree,
ditto.
I'll say it's very rare for the chatter to be there and not the tools. I've seen it like once or twice over the past probably year, where there's a lot of chatter, but yet the tools aren't showing anything.
I think it happens the other way more often, probably. Like,
maybe
a little more sensitive than,
yeah, for sure. Any event, I really appreciate everybody joining this call. I know your time is incredibly valuable these days. It's feeling isolated, and of course, Marie, for going out to your office and touching doorknobs with towels and stuff. So
with
I appreciate
Lysol wipes. Lysol wipes.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And again, this is recorded, so anybody who wants to watch it live, watch the recording afterwards can do so. There's one question that keeps coming up. I just figure I'll ask it, just because it's been asked numerous times. Should I use image hot linking protection on my blog? I've noticed many blogs are not using it. Also, not Search Engine Land. I'm a little bit confused by this. I don't know, Marie, if you're the SEO on the panel, go ahead.
What? Where did that come
I
from?
don't know, but
Should
it
I
was asked
use
like
image
17
hot
times.
linking? Generally, no. I think it depends. Let's end it there.
It depends.
I'm
That's always
just
a good answer.
kidding.
I
We'll
don't
just
use
end it with it depends.
I don't care if somebody steals my image, Google, whatever. It is what it is. If people are stealing images constantly, then maybe play games with them. I've seen some clever SEOs or webmasters do some clever things. If it's on a site of a competitor, and they could track that hot link, they will go ahead and replace that image with something funny, just to like play a trick on them. So maybe a picture of their CEO stealing something or whatever it might be. I'm not recommending you do this, but there's ways of
For
doing
example, you could do that.
in any event, we're at the top of the hour, so I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you guys all so much for doing this. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll guys see you soon in real life at a conference or something else. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Got
Barry.
it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.